Name Dr. Alistair the Scholar Finch, born and raised in Northwood, a quiet, affluent suburb of London. A brilliant but obscure historical linguist, known for his meticulous research, his obsessive focus, and his life's work. A massive handwritten thesis on forgotten dialects, titled The Semantic Drift of Proto-Indo-European Lexemes in Digital Environments. Alistair was recently engaged to Elara Vance, an astute investigative journalist, 35, who lived in a modest flat near King's Cross. Their meticulously planned future, filled with quiet evenings of research and the thrill of Elara's exposés, was utterly destroyed in a single chilling phone call. Elara was deep into an investigation of the global data mining behemoth OmniDataCorp, ODC, a corporation infamous for its ruthless acquisition, manipulation and systematic erasure of independent intellectual property that challenged their centralized narratives. She had discovered incontrovertible evidence of ODC illegally seizing and then purging decades of non-corporate academic research, critically including the only digital backup of Alistair's colossal life's work, the thesis. Her last scheduled act was to meet Alistair at the British Library to exchange her evidence for his research. Instead, she was killed in a staged cycling accident on the busy Euston Road, her custom-built brake lines expertly severed, just blocks from her underground office. The official report, quickly filed and sealed: mechanical failure, tragic commuter accident. Alistair found the final voicemail on her phone, marred by the telltale rush of wind. Ali, I have the evidence. ODC is burying everything, including your, followed by the sickening sound of metal crunching and then static. Alistair, numb with intellectual and emotional trauma, cremated Elara, boxed up her comprehensive research and immediately took an indefinite sabbatical, vanishing from the hallowed halls of academia for nearly 4 years. When he reappeared in London, the reserved tweed-clad academic was replaced by a figure who was sharper, his gaze colder, and his movements infused with an unnerving economy of motion. He now always carried a compact, worn leather-bound satchel, which seemed to contain a heavy, silent purpose. With his return, a new identity began to circulate in the dark web's restricted intellectual forums and in the coded whispers of corporate security specialists, a name reserved only for those who truly understood the power of fragile information and how easily it could be weaponized against its owners. The Archivist. Before we proceed, drop a comment telling us your favorite classic book and the current time where you are. Don't forget to hit the like button. Clerkenwell, London. October 2012, Wednesday, 11:34 a.m. Alistair was returning from a frustrating, fruitless day spent navigating the bureaucracy of the National Archives, his favorite tweed jacket damp with the penetrating London fog and a heavy, sodden stack of poorly photocopied journals in his hands. It had been a truly draining research day, the air thick and stale with the odor of old paper and dust motes. He was thinking of Elara, 35, and the passionate way she had described the insidious nature of the ODC servers. Ali, they operate with utter impunity. It's like they're trying to not just rewrite history, but delete the very possibility of independent thought by erasing the footnotes. That chilling sentence, a final piece of her journalistic puzzle, echoed through his head as he shakily unlocked the door to his quiet flat. But before the key fully turned, his phone buzzed. It was a generic, cold police text about a traffic incident that matched Elara's known route. He rushed back to Euston Road. He saw the violent, strobing red and blue lights first, then the grim figures of the forensics team covering a shape on the street, and the absolute worst sight, Elara's specialized camera bag, slightly scuffed but recognizable, lying abandoned by the curb. "It's Elara, my God, it is truly her," he whispered, his voice catching, as if his throat were now filled with the ashes of his thesis. His fiancée, eliminated by a sophisticated, targeted failure of equipment. The official version, regrettable accident. The driver of the delivery van was not at fault. The cold reality, the hit was flawlessly executed by a low-level ODC security contractor known only by his alias, the Glitch, and the official Metropolitan Police were silently instructed to prioritize swift traffic flow and corporate anonymity over a deep investigation. ODC had secured its secrets. Alistair had lost his entire future. Alistair stood there gazing down at a cracked telephoto lens filter on the oil-slicked road and a partially erased audio recorder, Elara's final essential tool, resting near the faint tire marks. He didn't allow himself to cry then, didn't permit himself to shout. He just locked down, the trauma causing his brilliant intellectual engine to seize, leaving him helplessly trapped in a recurring loop of logical and emotional failure. At the small, quiet memorial service, only a handful of timid colleagues dared to appear. Fear, a deep, pervasive corporate silence. The police only sent 2 uniformed officers to confirm names and addresses. The neighbors kept their curtains tightly drawn. One old colleague, a former systems analyst who now worked freelance, nervously approached him and muttered, "I pulled the network records. I think the security data was wiped clean just seconds after the incident. Check the ODC server farm registry. They have a known weak link in their operational hierarchy. Their chief of European security, a woman named Elara Vance." Alistair only watched the colleague's mouth moving, recording the name and the potential vulnerability, offering absolutely no reply. In the harrowing weeks that followed, he tried every academic and legal channel to access the closed case files, speak directly to the investigating officer, and even delivered Elara's recovered, water-damaged recorder to evidence. The response from the bureaucratic machine was always identical and infuriating. "The audio is too corrupted for forensic recovery. The coroner's report is officially sealed, Dr. Finch. These things happen with sad frequency in a metropolis of this size." These things happen. That's what they said to the man who could calculate the exact torque required for a controlled brake failure and understood the impossibility of 2 simultaneous, unrelated data corruptions. Alistair methodically closed up the flat, donated the majority of Elara's belongings to charity, but sealed his small, crowded study with heavy chains. He only went into the kitchen for sustenance, spending his nights sleeping restlessly on the cold floor among his stacks of books. One night, he pulled out his portable microfiche reader, sat on a wooden crate and stared at the empty viewing screen for hours. His usually chatty landlady saw him and later recounted, his eyes weren't brimming with tears or sadness anymore. They were the eyes of a man compiling a final binding syllabus for catastrophic revenge. The crucial information was not flowing to him. He would now go and extract it himself. 4 long, silent weeks after the funeral, Alistair was no longer a visible fixture at the university library, nor at the quiet reading room where he had meticulously written his thesis. What remained was a flat with the curtains perpetually drawn, a single cold light burning in the back study all night, and a man who, when he did leave, moved with a focused, almost frightening distance. At Scotland Yard, the case had been officially filed under the code "closed accidental." Alistair went there one last time, alone, armed with a meticulously detailed memo. Known ODC European server IPs, historical data on their corporate acquisitions, even the name and address of the obscure cycling repair shop Elara had used, a potential drop point. The supervising sergeant sighed dramatically, glanced at the densely packed pages, and said with a tone of utter finality, "Dr. Finch, we simply cannot act on academic theories and conjecture, however well researched." "But you can and must act on an executed murder, Sergeant," Alistair replied, his voice low and firm. Silence. The memo was contemptuously tossed into a large bin marked "Unfounded Claims." Alistair walked out, putting on a pair of heavily polarized sunglasses. He knew the official record would remain closed, but his personal investigation was now irrevocably open. Returning to his empty flat, he sat at the mahogany desk where Elara used to work, opened her laptop, and found the corrupted voicemail file. He spent 2 weeks straight running highly sophisticated spectral analysis on the high-frequency static. Hidden beneath the noise, a single final syllable emerged: theses. The thesis. His life's work. The only reason for her death. Alistair placed the laptop carefully into the leather-bound satchel, locked everything up again, and disappeared from London for several months. Some said he was at a highly secretive linguistics conference in Berlin. Others swore he was backpacking through the forgotten archives of Eastern Europe. What absolutely nobody knew was that he started appearing in places where his old identity was meaningless: specialized military surplus stores near the former Soviet bloc, high-level computer forensics training centers in Malta and Cyprus, and clandestine, unsanctioned hardware markets in Prague. He acquired a new reinforced satchel, specialized diamond-tipped lockpicking tools, highly encrypted hard drives designed for espionage, rolls of fiber-optic cable, miniature pinhole cameras, and a blank black moleskin notebook bound in rugged linen. In this he began his new deadly form of research, writing differently, secure server locations, proprietary encryption keys, corporate-only nicknames, physical security protocols. He taught himself the dark linguistics of code, treating Python and SQL as dead languages to be mastered and weaponized. A former student, now a junior programmer, later recounted the sighting. I saw him at a custom electronics shop in Helsinki buying a custom circuit board, a specialized logic board designed for high-speed targeted data extraction. I nervously asked him if he was building a new decentralized network. He looked at me with those cold eyes and said, "Just restructuring a few lives and delinking some protocols." He walked out without another word. A new, cold fear began to circulate in the niche European corporate security community. Some whispers suggested that the glitch had suddenly been seen speeding down unlisted industrial routes, checking his brakes obsessively, displaying classic signs of occupational paranoia. Others said Elara Vance, the formidable head of ODC security, was suddenly upgrading all her personal firewalls and changing her passwords every 4 hours, running diagnostic checks on her communication systems. But nobody dared to publicly confirm anything. Too much knowledge in this world shortens your operational lifespan dramatically. Alistair now moved with absolute precision, upright posture, calculated pace, his every movement infused with a lethal focus. When he walked past, people automatically avoided his gaze, as if he had returned from a black operation sanctioned by no one. What they didn't know was that the operation had just transitioned from research to execution. Alistair's silence was no longer grief. It was impenetrable data compilation and operational readiness. In the back room of his flat, he sealed off a small, forgotten utility closet, lining the walls with specialized signal-blocking foil to create a Faraday cage. There he carefully installed a thin server rack, a shelf with military-grade backup batteries, a professional noise-dampening system, and a customized toolkit that held very different instruments. Miniature surgical drills, high-speed network sniffers designed for deep packet inspection, sophisticated cryptographic keys, and laminated hand-drawn blueprints of ODC's European data centers, annotated with known and suspected vulnerabilities. On the walls, old photos of Elara, and in the black moleskin, a grim, meticulously structured index: the glitch, physical security; Elara Vance, digital command; the broker, legal data interface; an ODC legal liaison. Beside the names, network entry points, biometric access card frequencies, and behavioral vulnerabilities, the human firewall flaws. Alistair began his methodical circulation in the perimeter, dressed in simple, intentionally nondescript clothing: dark trousers, a generic windbreaker, reading glasses, a baseball cap pulled low. To passers-by, he was just another slightly overwhelmed academic heading to a late lecture or an early meeting, but he wasn't teaching anything. He was actively scanning the network topology and the physical security protocols. One night, he sat for 5 hours at a smoky late-night internet cafe near a secondary ODC satellite office, ordering only weak tea, listening intently to the network traffic flowing through the public Wi-Fi, searching for anomalous server requests. Another time, he successfully infiltrated a corporate training seminar in Hamburg, posing as a freelance translator, and paid a junior employee a small fortune for a discarded Level 2 access card and its corresponding swipe pattern. These new security architects rely far too much on simple software solutions, believing code is unbreakable. The old masters respected the physical breach and the human element. Now it's just easily cracked digital locks and easily predictable targets. Alistair absorbed every detail, making silent coded entries in the ledger, translating the language of security failure. His mind underwent a terrifying metamorphosis. He started practicing highly complex code injections in his flat late at night, running multiple virtual machines simultaneously in isolated sandboxes. He ran intricate penetration tests on government systems he had no authority to access, honing his attack vectors, his face obscured by the flickering glow of his monitors. He trained with the small, specialized high-speed drill, opening high-security locks on a training board in his closet, the sharp, precise whir becoming his new obsessive metronome. Neighbors complained about the strange, intermittent noise, assuming it was poor appliance repair. It was just Alistair calibrating his infiltration methods, optimizing for speed and silence. One evening, he took a night train to Geneva, entered a private, highly exclusive information broker's office, showed a flawless fake identity, and paid for an hour of focused consultation on zero-day exploits and black market data recovery tools. He was looking for a specific unpatched vulnerability in the ODC's legacy systems. Dr. Finch, you are discussing methods typically reserved for state-level intelligence. Have you ever engaged in this kind of operation before? The broker asked, clearly nervous and suspicious. Only historical research and complex dialect translation, the science of finding what is hidden beneath the surface, Alistair replied, his face unreadable. On his way back, he bought a specialized military-grade electromagnetic pulse pen and a set of forensic data magnets designed to erase specific tracks without affecting surrounding hardware. The clerk tried to sell him an extended maintenance plan for the equipment. He simply answered, "I only require a single successful use that ends all maintenance needs." But it wasn't a single use he wanted. It was finality in the digital record. Time passed, and Alistair's face vanished entirely from the normal university and academic routes. He now frequented the cold, forgotten network server backrooms of the city, abandoned communications tunnels beneath the financial district, and obscure network junctions that led directly into the central digital heart of ODC's European operations. One day, a name on his list appeared in a deep-dive data privacy blog. The broker, allegedly involved in a massive corporate data dump scandal that had been quickly covered up with legal maneuvers. Alistair paused the online article, printed the man's organizational chart, then drew a clean, precise X over his face with a red marker. For the first time, a grim, tightly controlled sense of validation crossed his features. 4 long years is more than enough time for a lot to change in the data world. Platforms evolve, encryption standards are cracked, and security protocols are constantly rewritten. But in that small, specialized corner of the dark web, one thing remained absolutely the same: the truth. It was November 2016, when a retired academic recognized the man who walked slowly past the university hall with a worn satchel on his back and the same chilling focus from 4 years ago, but now carrying a palpable weight of purpose. The burden on his face wasn't just scholarship, it was intellectual exaction. Alistair returned as someone who knew every flaw in the system architecture, every patch that had failed. His bespoke carbon-soled shoes made no sound on the tiled floors. His movements were precise, lethally measured. He sought no conversation, avoided all eye contact. He moved forward as if every network segment was just a crucial part of his final, definitive thesis. And that same day, he used a zero-day exploit to access the old campus network, gaining a vantage point overlooking the main server room, where he'd heard the broker often met his clients to finalize sensitive deals. He sat there, hidden, for nearly 3 hours. He didn't even check his email. He just passively monitored the data flow and metadata for patterns. He saw exactly who logged in, who logged out. The highly encrypted chat session that popped up every evening at 8:15 p.m., the man who accepted the data packet before logging off through an untraceable VPN. Alistair drew the local network topology in his moleskin: nodes, firewalls, and a symbol next to the broker's name. A black hash, the symbol for data destruction, annotated with the time 8:17 p.m. That night, he slept in a converted air conditioning unit room in the building of an old colleague, a former archivist who owed his old professor a massive intellectual favor. "I don't need to know your data path, Alistair. Just please, no digital footprint. This system has seen enough ghost files and corrupted data to last a lifetime." Alistair didn't reply, just rested his head against the cold metal casing, dozed for 4 hours in the pitch dark, a modified USB data cable taped securely to his forearm. The next day, he went to a specialty electronics store, bought a large roll of signal-blocking foil, a new logic analyzer, a precision screwdriver set, and a high-power laser pointer. He put everything into a non-branded delivery backpack. He passed a major corporate security checkpoint. No one noticed him. Nobody suspects an IT repairman with tools, especially one who doesn't engage, doesn't rush, and doesn't look back. It was as if Alistair had learned to hack invisibility into his physical presence. In the digital underground, the talk was that someone was coming back to declassify a cold case. Nobody dared to say the name, but some remembered and whispered, "If it's the Archivist, better back up your data and pray." The first physical and digital contact was at the zero-day security conference, a small, highly exclusive event where the broker, another name on the list, often showed up on the final evening. Alistair walked in, showed a borrowed press badge, and stood strategically near the main network hub, observing the flow of people and data. The broker didn't recognize him. He was sleeker, more corporate, wearing a custom-tailored suit. Alistair listened to him talk for over 30 minutes, noting the precise language he used to obfuscate truth. He was loud, boastful, laughing about the ODC acquisitions 4 years ago. That journalist was an absolute nuisance. We deleted her research, and the entire investigation went completely offline. Her boyfriend's thesis, probably still collecting dust in some old drawer somewhere where it belongs. Alistair didn't react. He finished his soft drink, paid with an untraceable crypto wallet, and left. That very night, he drew a full schematic of the conference network and noted, broker, Tues, Thurs, Fry, 9 p.m., connects via unsecured hotspot, prioritizing speed over security. Login password is his daughter's birth date, vulnerable and utterly predictable. For an entire month, Alistair studied the first 3 names with the meticulous detail of a doctoral candidate. It wasn't simple revenge, it was algorithmic necessity, the removal of corrupted data nodes. One day, he was nearly detained by a corporate security guard while testing an access door. He was in a restricted, poorly lit service tunnel with his heavy satchel, but a former student, a junior developer named Ben who saw him from afar, gave a slight nod and told the officers, "That's Dr. Finch, an external consultant, just checking the old server racks for legacy hardware issues." The guard walked on. Alistair added the developer's name to his moleskin. Beside it he wrote, "Evade, knows too much and is loyal, but to the wrong party." Then came the night he decided to execute the corrupting code he had written for 4 years. It wasn't against Zara Vex yet. Alistair knew touching the head of security would trigger a worldwide cyber lockdown and a military-grade response. He had to start with the data layers, send a message that left absolutely no server log, and created maximum panic. The chosen one was the broker, the legal liaison who, according to the network whispers Alistair had captured, had signed off on the digital destruction of Elara's investigation and Alistair's thesis. The broker was the most exposed. He traveled alone, thought his corporate shield was impenetrable, brokered sensitive deals, and used an old encrypted satellite phone. Alistair waited for a Tuesday when the broker was leaving his lawyer's office for a late flight. The street was dark, outside CCTV range, with a weak network signal, perfect for signal injection. Alistair had checked the satellite trajectory twice, timing the data transfer precisely. At the exact calculated moment he appeared behind him, a dry, precise movement. A specialized magnetic strip attached to the broker's briefcase, a quick, untraceable injection of code into his sat phone via a near-field antenna, a flash of the laser to temporarily blind the nearest security camera, all in perfect silence. The broker's phone instantly went dark. His briefcase locked itself with an unknown code, and his entire satchel, now heavily magnetized, was pulled away by a concealed wire. Taken to an abandoned call center Alistair had rented days before, a location entirely shielded from network traffic. Inside, the broker woke up, finding himself strapped securely to a chair. The only light came from a single terminal screen running a custom command line interface. Alistair didn't say his name, just showed a printout of Elara's final corrupted audio file, displaying the spectral analysis that showed evidence of digital tampering, the language of his guilt. Then a printout of the first seminal page of his stolen thesis. The broker tried to deny it. It was a legal order. I didn't personally erase anything. I just signed the form." But Alistair wasn't there to hear mitigation. The chilling sound of the custom magnetic data wipe utility echoed through the sealed room like a corrupted hard drive failing under duress, a sound the broker knew well. And when the terminal screen went completely dark, the digital world heard nothing. Not a single error message, only the absolute silence of permanent erasure. Alistair left the broker physically unharmed but digitally annihilated, trapped in a room with no communication, no data, and only the knowledge of what he had destroyed. The next day, ODC's legal department was completely paralyzed. The broker was not found, but his briefcase was. A note was found inside, addressed to the CEO. "When the evidence is deleted, the source code will self-destruct. Every lie leaves a permanent mark. The signature, none. But to those who knew Alistair, it translated into a final, undeniable statement. The first X was digitally drawn in the moleskin still that night, on a securely encrypted laptop. The intelligence community and ODC's private security woke up the next day to sheer, unmitigated terror. The broker had not just vanished. His entire existence, both corporate and personal, had been systemically and untraceably erased. All data records, digital footprints, financial history, and personal correspondence were gone, leaving behind only dead links and empty database fields, the digital equivalent of a ghost town. ODC's internal security was in chaos, unable to find a single identifiable log entry pointing to the breach, the method, or the perpetrator. The attack was a perfect vacuum, and that's when a high-level ODC executive, his face pale and sweating despite the air conditioning, whispered nervously into a secure line, his voice tight with fear. "They say the Archivist is back, and he's not just retrieving data, he's clean-sweeping their entire operational past, node by node, leaving zero trace. This isn't hacking, it's digital exorcism, a complete, precise deletion of a history we tried to write." The message was delivered, but it was only the introduction to a deeper, paralyzing corporate dread. In the global network of clandestine operations, when a profile disappears without a trace, without a recoverable log, without a recovery option, it has two crucial meanings. Either a powerful sovereign state's intelligence apparatus ordered the hit with unlimited resources, or it was someone who knows how to operate without generating metadata, a perfect, undetectable ghost in the system, utilizing techniques outside the known cyber warfare lexicon. Security analysts quickly concluded it wasn't a state order. It was the work of a lone wolf with a thesis to prove, and an intact, unforgiving memory, weaponizing linguistic and forensic precision to dismantle their targets. Alistair didn't go home that night, nor the next several months. His routine became a complex, calculated, and highly ritualized orbit around ODC's operational hubs. He established 3 isolated rotating safe houses, renting them using untraceable crypto, ensuring all were lined with signal-blocking foil to create localized Faraday cages against external monitoring. He sat there, his glasses slightly fogged from the heat of his processors and the lack of proper ventilation, the moleskin open on his lap, a constant companion. Next to the broker's name, he wrote, "Declassified and nullified. Target, Data Layer 1. Vulnerability, legal, predictability." Next to Elara Vance and the glitch, the X was still waiting. But the black hash and the mark of absolute security compromise around Zara's name now included an entire section detailing her known communication frequency and hardware specifications. During this period, Alistair devoted 4 hours a day to linguistic maintenance, forcing himself to translate ancient texts to anchor his sanity, contrasting the purity of dead languages with the corrupt, ephemeral data streams of ODC. His research evolved into a doctrine. Every lie leaves a semantic trace. Every deletion creates a negative space that can be weaponized. Alistair moved with flawless OPSEC. He changed his digital identity every 48 hours, rigorously rotating VPNs and virtual machine instances, often running 3 different operating systems, simultaneously in isolated sandboxes to mask his activities. He learned to disassemble and reassemble his hardware encryption key in under 10 seconds, separating the physical device from the internal firmware to prevent capture and compromise. His equipment, miniature fiber optic taps, thermal vision lenses, and magnetic disablers, were meticulously cleaned with sterile alcohol after every use and stored in vacuum-sealed bags. ODC security, led by a frantic, increasingly paranoid Elara Vance, tightened their perimeter. They deployed advanced network honeypots disguised as public Wi-Fi access points. Network probes lingered half a second too long, desperate to resolve the phantom IP address of the Archivist. Alistair noted the increase in aerial surveillance. A police drone re-roted when he walked under a bridge, directed by pattern recognition software searching for his specific academic gait. This heightened state of alert was his final tool. He was generating controlled chaos. The next target was CRUELEST, the glitch, the low-level security contractor who physically carried out the hit on Elara. Alistair needed a physical confirmation of guilt and a clear message that ODC could not shield its operatives. Alistair took 6 intensive weeks to study Glitch's routine, focusing on the glaring psychological flaws behind his physical defense. He discovered Glitch had a peculiar analog weakness, an old unlisted gaming addiction that required him to log into an old unsecured private server every Friday night for a dedicated multiplayer session, communicating via an unencrypted local voice channel with old trusted school friends, a massive operational security lapse driven by nostalgia and hubris. Alistair mounted the final part of the plan on a separate sheet of the moleskin, treating it like a physical attack diagram overlaid onto a network schematic. He detailed the Glitch's route home, the time window, the exact entry and exit points, and the location of the gaming server. He prepared a custom malware payload, meticulously crafted to appear like a standard operating system update from a trusted vendor, a Trojan horse disguised as maintenance, written in a rarely used legacy coding language and encrypted using an ancient, low-complexity cipher to evade modern high-complexity deep packet inspection. He hid his hardware exploit kit inside a discarded CPU tower box left near a public bin, disguised as e-waste, precisely positioned along the Glitch's predictable route. Friday, 02:04 a.m. The Glitch was logged in, headset on, deeply engrossed in his game, screaming profanities at his teammates. The car was parked outside an apartment building near Heathrow, a supposed safe zone. Alistair, concealed on the rooftop opposite, remotely accessed the building's central router, exploiting a known vulnerability in its older firmware. The malware was deployed silently through the gaming port, disguising itself as a patch file download. The Glitch's screen instantly flashed a blinding deep crimson, displaying a message in perfect archaic Proto-Indo-European. Lexim erat deletum, et pretium est vitae. Non-redundant array failure. Error code. Elara. The word was deleted and the price is life. Non-redundant array failure. Error code Elara. Alistair, listening remotely through a mic placed by the broker's crew, heard the Glitch's horrified, disbelieving scream. System failure. We're losing the network. What the hell is that language? My files are gone. Who are you? Alistair was already in motion, dropping down via a concealed service ladder into the parking garage below. He found the Glitch's rental car parked in a private bay. Inside, the Glitch was frantically trying to reboot his now useless infected laptop, the strange language message still burning into the screen. Alistair pressed a magnetic disabler against the mechanical door lock. The door opened with a soft click. The Glitch looked up, stunned and terrified, his face pale as he recognized the figure from the archived file. Who are you? I'll kill you. You're the professor. You're the archivist. I just tampered with the brakes, man. I didn't kill her. I am the consequence of a failed brake line, a corrupted file, and a history you thought you could erase, Alistair whispered, stepping fully into the harsh fluorescent light. He showed the Glitch the final partial image from Elara's recovered camera, a fleeting, damning image of the Glitch's face, reflected in a side mirror just before the impact, complete with a GPS timestamp that placed him at the scene. The Glitch screamed, collapsing, but Alistair had already executed his final piece of code. He deployed a powerful short-range EMP burst, carefully tuned to wipe only magnetic media in the immediate vicinity, including the Glitch's backup drives, keycards, and personal cell phones, leaving him technologically naked and professionally ruined. Alistair left the Glitch physically unharmed, but professionally and digitally annihilated, trapped in a garage with no communication, no data, and only the knowledge of his failure and the haunting words in a dead language. The second-ounce case was drawn in the moleskin still that night, in a secure safe house 10 miles away. Next to the name, Alistair added a single word: analog, exposed, retribution, physical, digital cascade. The ODC board woke up the next day with 2 devastating rumors. The Glitch had vanished. His apartment was found filled with printouts of his deeply personal browsing history, gaming scores, and a single damning note left on his pillow. The accident was not random. It was designed, and you were the payload. Your history is now a blank page. The message was now undeniably clear. The attacks were precise, personal, and devastatingly effective against both the digital and physical assets of ODC, proving that Zaravex's security model had failed spectacularly. The final target was Zaravex, the chief of security, the top name on the list, the one who authorized the deletion. Alistair understood Vex was not a coder or a field agent. She was a master of illogistical obfuscation and denial, the intellectual architect of the erasure. She was the most protected, the most connected, the true head of the systematic erasure. She had deep, untraceable ties to the city's critical infrastructure, lived in a penthouse with multi-layered biometric and retinal locks, and never traveled without a secure, redundant server link that maintained a constant encrypted channel to ODC's central hub. Alistair spent 3 intensive months observing her, focusing not on physical movement, but on communication patterns and digital habits, treating her life as a complex, repetitive data set, a highly sensitive document waiting to be decrypted. He discovered her greatest professional weakness was her reliance on old-world, unhackable security, a preference for analog, non-networked backups, and a specialized high-frequency radio receiver for encrypted daily reports from her internal team, a security relic from a bygone era that she considered infallible due to its lack of an IP address. Alistair planned the climax, a simultaneous physical infiltration into ODC's central data repository, and a psychological digital broadcast against Vex. He developed a specialized, self-contained, encrypted USB stick, the thesis key, containing the entire recovered work of Elara and his own research, meticulously designed to upload directly to ODC's central air-gapped server, bypassing all known security layers by exploiting an ancient, unpatched serial port designed for diagnostics. Alistair chose the night of the ODC annual board meeting, knowing Vex would be at her highest state of alert, but also physically isolated in her command center. He bypassed 3 layers of perimeter security using cloned access cards, a custom-built directional noise generator, and a thermal camouflage suit he custom-built from specialized textiles. He entered her building through the maintenance shafts, using his miniature surgical drills to bypass the magnetic locks on the service elevators, treating the building's architecture as a large, complex grammar that only he knew how to parse. Alistair breached the penthouse and located her private sanctuary, which contained a hidden door to her off-site command center. Vex was not there. She was monitoring the chaos from her subterranean war room, but her private sanctuary was exposed. Alistair quickly located her private air-gapped server rack, concealed behind a rotating bookcase. He inserted the thesis key into the diagnostic port and initiated the upload. The key began a slow, silent upload, simultaneously initiating a recursive data corruption routine on Vex's personal operating system, replacing core files with fragments of his thesis. He then moved to the rooftop opposite Vex's command center. At 01 a.m., the exact time of the daily encrypted security report, he intercepted her private communication stream. He didn't simply interrupt the signal, he overwrote and replaced it with a powerful, looping broadcast signal. He replaced the daily security update with Elara's final corrupted voicemail, forensically cleaned and amplified to penetrate all shielding, followed by a low, haunting digital reading of the opening page of his stolen thesis, reciting the exact protocols of her systematic failure and the deletion of his work. The broadcast repeated every 5 minutes, a digital curse transmitted on an analog frequency, flooding her command center with the sound of her failure and her victim's last words. The next morning, Zara Vex did not come to work. Her team found her in her penthouse surrounded by thousands of pages of Elara's thesis, pages that had been remotely forced onto her networked printers, exhausting her paper and ink supply. Her personal computer systems were entirely dead. She was in a state of profound psychological shock. Her personal server offline, Alistair's logic bomb had triggered a cascading failure, and her old-school radio playing the constant, haunting static of Elara's last message, a symbol of the chaos of her own professional and personal failure. She was taken into psychiatric custody, unable to articulate anything but the repeating phrase, "The Lexeme is back. The Lexeme is alive. The footnotes have won the war." Alistair knew the thesis was now complete. He finished the final page of his moleskin. He wrote one last definitive entry, not an X, but a final complete sentence in classical Greek. Alithia udiagraphete, ae uposimiosis epiviusin ke krinusin. The truth is not erased. The footnotes survive and judge. He then wiped his entire operational footprint, placed the moleskin into a secure, self-destructing data capsule, designed to burn itself to ash if tampered with, put the capsule into the satchel, and walked out of the city, his purpose fulfilled and his debt paid in full. A few months later, the capsule was found by a janitor near the British Library. It contained only the moleskin and a final handwritten note from Alistair, written in his familiar academic hand. Thesis submitted. Truth restored. The footnotes have been reinstated into the main text where they belong, forming a new, unbreakable narrative. Alistair vanished. Some say he is in South America, working on forgotten tribal languages, dedicating his life to preserving what others seek to destroy. Others swear he is a systems analyst in Silicon Valley, perpetually monitoring global networks for digital threats. But the name the Archivist remains, a ghost in the machine, a whisper in the data stream, a permanent indelible footnote in the history that OmniDataCorp tried to delete. The corporation never fully recovered from the internal data breaches and the fear that a lone scholar, armed only with knowledge and rage, had managed to dismantle their corporate security from the inside out. The academic community quietly rejoiced, finding their lost research gradually reappearing in decentralized, untraceable caches, the enduring legacy of a scholar who proved that some data is simply too important to be deleted, and that truth, like language, always finds a way to survive and judge.